Hi, my name is Walter Rigdon, and this is going to be my final project video. So for my topic that I chose was the impact of vehicle emissions on the environment and the world, and basically my solution to that and all that kind of stuff. So let's start with the overview. So vehicle emissions have been having a profound impact on the world's environmental health for especially the last 50 years. With the rate of transportation by cars increasing every year due to the increase in population, we keep expanding construction more and more of our land, and that's leading to an increase in carbon emissions over time. So it's a major issue it's starting to have devastating effects already, but it's going to keep snowballing and having more devastating effects as more time goes on and we leave it unchecked. So in 2016, 6.7 million premature deaths were attributed to emission from various sources, including vehicle emissions. This was said by the World Health Organization, and they report that road traffic related air pollution is leading contributor to diseases such as heart disease, stroke, respiratory conditions. So it kind of shows just some of the major impacts of it that we've already been seeing. So these effects are only growing stronger as time goes on, as the issues stay unaddressed. There are attempts being made worldwide which acknowledge the devastating effects, and that something must be done about it. Things like the Paris Climate Agreement, which multiple countries are collectively agreeing to make an effort to strive for far less emissions worldwide with the aim of preserving the good health of the globe. A major issue on the topic is many people and governments refusing to believe the effects of it or dismissing and diminishing the effects and the importance and the impact that it actually does really have. According to the International Energy Agency, the transportation sector is responsible for approximately 14 to 16% of the total global greenhouse gas emissions. So that includes road vehicles, planes, anything shipping wise, anything like that. And that shows like with such a big impact and how much it's contributing that it can't really be overlooked because it's already having such a wide impact on the world. And so this issue, getting more now into the components of it, this issue splits up into a lot of different components that make it up. So some of the big ones is first is the social systems, and that includes the income gap disparity and the public health risks. So as I stated earlier, the emissions have already shown detrimental effects in the way of premature deaths and an increase in many medical conditions. According to the American Lung Association, quote, low income minority communities, particularly those living in urban areas, are often located near major highways and high traffic areas, resulting in higher exposure to vehicle emissions and associated health risks. Studies have shown these populations suffer from higher incidence of respiratory diseases and cardiovascular problems due to their proximity to polluted environments. And so that report was done in 2020. It was the status of air report. So it kind of shows how your income standing and wealth standing can even affect how much emissions can hurt you. And it also displays the importance of people needing to have a voice. These companies and people in charge are usually in a higher wealth status than others, in a higher income bracket than others. So they're not being as heavily affected by it, and they don't see the major issues that a lot of the other people are seeing from these emissions. So they can't really fully grasp or understand the importance of it. There's also Oh yeah, so that kind of shows why rallying and speaking up about it to politicians and the people who make the policies is such an important part of it. So in addition to social components, there's also a lot of ecological components that can play into it. So the biggest one includes the degradation of the ozone layer due to smog and emissions. In 2021, the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, said ground level ozone, which is a major component of smog, is formed when nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds emitted by vehicles and industrial processes react with sunlight. This elevated ozone layer not only harms human health, but also contributes to the depletion of our ozone layer, disrupting ecosystems and accelerating global warming. So this is a major issue because it contributes to global warming, which has also been having detrimental effects on the environment and our world, and it's going to continue to have more and bigger effects. So that's kind of seen. It's going to have like a chain effect essentially, where it keeps going and it keeps impacting us and hurting us more and more. So we've been seeing it even here around the world with temperature shifts, and we've been experiencing higher temperatures and seeing less change in those temperatures over time. So we're already seeing the effects of it, and it's only going to get worse. We need to decrease the degradation of the ozone layer majorly and as quickly as possible, and that's going to be one of the most important parts of reducing vehicle emissions is preserving the ozone layer and limiting climate change. Um, so there's also a lot of major technological components that play a big role in this issue. The world reliance on fossil fuels for transportation is a massive factor. While we need to move away from less fueled emissions to get around, there are some existing alternative solutions, but it's hard for many people to accept, and many don't want to move away from things driven by gasoline or don't want to move to modes of public transportation. Our infrastructure on renewable energy is also an issue. With a lack of many good or renewable energy options, it's hard to fall back from fossil fuels. In 2021, the U.S. Department of Energy said one of the most significant barriers in widespread adoption of electric vehicles is the lack of an adequate charging infrastructure. As of 2021, there are approximately 100,000 public charging stations in the U.S., but to meet future demand, this number must increase dramatically. With a comprehensive, reliable network of charging stations, the transition to EVs will face significant delays, hindering efforts to reduce vehicle emissions and shift to clean transportation. So, a lack of good infrastructure makes it hard for us to move away from systems that are harmful to us. So, we first need to look at ways to make renewable energy the main path, and then we have to be able to make it widely available in order to easily transition over something that can actually help us. So that's a big one. Our technology is kind of limiting us, but we also need to be able to transfer over to it. And then the government and policies and regulations are going to be the last component. The government plays the most crucial role in the process. They have to back it and mandate the regulations and policies in order to actually have an effect and reduce the amount of emissions from vehicles. They must be persuaded by the people in order to make sure, as an important issue within the country's government, people need to elect officials who know and understand the importance of the issue, someone who can push these ideas and thoughts into actual tangible laws and acts and have a real impact to decrease our emissions. So that's pretty much the components that make up the different. Okay, and next is some of the ecosystem services that are associated with this issue. So there's pretty much three major ones that deal with this. So the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, is a major one. They push for a lack of vehicle emissions heavily. The agency sets standards for vehicle emissions. So stuff like the Clean Air Act, which sets the tone for how much clean, like the quality of air that's supposed to be outputted all the time. They set the Tier 3 motor vehicle emission and fuel standards. These standards limit the amount of pollutants that can be emitted from new vehicles, stuff like that. The World Health Organization is another one. They're a major entity that works for the betterment of the ecosystem and planet health all over the globes. They do the global air quality guidelines, so they kind of inform and educate and help people formulate plans and stuff how to affect and make their stuff more efficient. And then the last one I have on here that's a major one is the U.S. Department of Energy. So they have a lot of programs like alternative fuels data center. So these are looking at how to get alternative fuels, setting up more stuff for electric vehicles and making it more widely available so we can shift out of fossil fuels. And then lastly, that brings me into my solution. So it's kind of broken up into different parts here. So it has to be attacked on many different fronts here. So the first and foremost, we need to be more stricter in enforcing clean air standard. This kind of comes in with policy and regulations. More regulations like the Clean Air Act set up by the EPA. It has to be strict to have people adhere to it. So we have to keep strict standards on the air quality that's allowed to be within cities and roadways and what cars are outputting. The government also needs to show a major support and a massive switch to electric vehicles. A switch like this can be encouraged or even incentivized by the government. This can be done through a means of tax rebates, infrastructure investment, and subsidies, stuff like that, that encourages people to progress over to EV and that's supported and backed by the government will have more success than just telling people to do it without anything behind it. So we also have to have push-throughs in technology. We need to keep pushing forward the research for alternative fuel options. We have to keep experimenting for sustainable practices so we can move out of fossil fuels and transfer into more sustainable practices for the future. And then lastly, we kind of have our changes in our behaviors and the way we set stuff up socially. So that includes putting carpooling and public transportation, which is also kind of done by the Arizona Department of Transportation already, as they send out annual surveys showing how they can make it more widely available and more of it incentivized for people to do public transportation or carpool to minimize that. and stuff like planning for urban, so like our urban infrastructure planning, making cities more walkable, more public transportation that just makes it less reliant on cars will have a major impact in the way that we have our emissions, and that'll heavily impact our emissions, which will have a good turn on the environment. So we need a combination of policy and government changes, as well as a big lifestyle change from everybody. But everybody has to contribute and to be on board in order to make a real change that we can actually see. And that was my project.